So, one of the things that people love to recommend for victims of abuse, and just like in general, although I feel like we're kind of on the backside of it now, is they like to recommend mindfulness practices. But the problem is, people are getting very excited about these modalities and prescribing it at others because it helped them. And they think, oh, because it helped me, it must help everybody else. And it is actually a potential issue for victims of abuse. Something like 8 to 11% of people have adverse reactions to mindfulness practices. And this is up to and including psychosis. When you have people that come at you with the recommendations of like what is going to fix you, you should be very cautious. The thing about being a human being is that we get to decide. We get to decide, and not only that, we're not all the same. And so people will get very invested in the thing that helped them. Then they will go around and like try and force other people to do that thing or believe also that it will save them in some way. So that already to me is a concern, right? That we are prescribing at people and we're trying to proselytize at people about this like methodology, and they're not doing it by adding in the caveats that vulnerable people really need to know. So the other thing too is that people don't generally understand mindfulness practices and what exactly that they're doing. They're not all the same. But they get lumped together. So you have your metacognition, which is we're thinking about thinking. We're thinking about how we think. We're engaging with that side of our mind. Then there's the more experiential mindfulness practice where you're trying to be in the moment and just be intensely aware in the moment. And then you have sort of like your body work practices where you're not really trying to be aware per se. You're just more trying to be in the flow. Those are different things. Now imagine you're a victim of abuse. Maybe you're in active abuse, and you're suddenly in a position where you've got to think about your thinking. All right, that's already one of the things that the abuser has intrinsically compromised. Or you've got to be intensely self-aware in the moment. Well, what are victims of abuse often doing to protect themselves? They're often like dissociating because being intensely in the moment is not a safe place to be, and your brain is trying to help you by helping you mentally escape or whatever the coping mechanism is. Like, we're all individual, unique people, and our brains do what they think is in our best interest. Then you've got the body side, right? So you're in the flow, you're doing the thing, but your body, it's giving The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Your body may not be in a position that it has processed all of the emotional trauma, PTSD, like you might be dealing with panic attacks. So victims of abuse, out of that 8 to 11%, I would say victims of abuse or people who have mental illnesses or are predisposed to mental illnesses, they're going to be, I would say, disproportionately represent that 8 to 11%. This is really just a very similar thing to the drug discussion. Someone discovers, I don't know, let's say ketamine or one of them, and they're like, oh no, but it opened my mind. LSD, I think I remember that being one too, where it's like, oh, this opened my mind and I gained empathy and I felt connected to the universe and da 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 da. And everyone should do this because what an incredible experience I think everyone should have. And many people do not have the right biology or mental state to be engaging in these things. So anything that bypasses your cognition or anything that bypasses your emotions, right? These two things work in concert to help us orient in reality. So when you bypass the cognition to just do the body things, we just want to be careful. I'm not saying no, I'm just saying being aware. Anything that bypasses our cognition or our body to just focus on the cognition, like you can get into rumination and obsession territory very quickly. And actually, just sort of going back to the victim scrolling video that I did, right? When something makes us feel good and then we want to do more of it, right? It becomes an addiction. You don't get to a place where you can we need to integrate the information. We're moving toward wholeness, we're moving towards integration. That's how we kind of like maintain our identity. You always want to be the center of your own internal universe, and you want to be the center of making decisions for yourself, because we all have that like the little inner voice that lets us know like, yes, let's do this, or that's not going to work for me. What works for one person isn't necessarily what's going to work for everyone. We're not all the same people. We haven't all had the same experiences in life, and we're not all vulnerable in the same way. Another thing. Okay, so I realized actually this morning why I am so wary of gurus, because I've mentioned this in other videos where I'm just like, please be so careful. I I forgot. So I actually grew up, I didn't grow up in Christianity like most people in my country. I grew up in the New Age, New Thought environment. We had gurus. We did meditation retreats. I've been to a sweat lodge. And so the guru model, and not just in like kind of a new thought, new age environment, but in Buddhism or in Hinduism, the guru model is that you make a decision to sit at the foot of another person, at the feet of another person, and you just take everything that they say and you do it, right? There's no building trust. You don't know who this person is. You've just been told they're more enlightened than you are and you should do what they say. And then they often have you do a lot of repetitive tasks that are menial labor, and there's a purpose behind it, right? But you have no idea. You're not making decisions for yourself. You're just doing what another person is telling you to do, and you're supposed to trust them. And as we have seen, people abuse positions of power over others. And so this can go very badly very quickly. And so, again, anything that interrupts that part of yourself that says, oh, do I get to make a decision here? Or are they just expecting me to just do whatever they say? Do I get to think about this and decide? Anything that takes away your decision, you should be extremely careful about. And the problem is that sometimes when we're vulnerable, we can want someone to come in and just like tell us what to do. And maybe it feels safe, and it's hard, because really the thing that keeps us safe is that inner part of ourself, that is the little voice, right? That's what keeps us safe. Kind of developing, whether it's like your gut instinct or however we conceptualize it, just there's something within you that is trying to reach you without overpowering you, to give you information that you can choose. But at the same time, it has your best interests at heart. So listening to our gut instinct, or listening to our inner voice, or listening to whatever, however we conceptualize it, so that we can preserve our ability to think and make decisions. Anyway, I didn't know a lot of this, because when I was younger, that's just what I grew up in. And so I ended up at a silent retreat, but I didn't know it was a silent retreat because I didn't tell anybody. They just said, we're doing this retreat, come to the mountains. So of course, like, you're isolated in nature, in the middle of nowhere. And so I'd convinced someone else to come with me. We show up to the silent retreat and we learn, oh no, it's a silent retreat. Now, when I had done retreats before, even as a kid, you might have a day of silence, but it was never the whole experience. So the whole week was silence, except for the part where we would sit down in front of each other for hours and we would ask each other the same question over and over again, which was, tell me who you are. And then you'd stare intensely into each other's eyes. And let me tell you, that is a psychological tool for breaking people down. Yeah. And so I was like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, no one else is like concerned. Why is no one, we had no idea. And also it's vegetarian. And like, I love vegetables, but I want to make that choice, you know? I want to be able to choose for me. So they were controlling the food and they were controlling our ability to choose because they didn't tell us it was a silent retreat. And I just trusted, oh, I really like this person. They did this other thing. I wanted, like, I'm hyped for it. Let's go. And yeah, so I think when I think back on it, that whole like, tell me who you are, like communicating it with your eyes, was supposed to communicate intensity, maybe. You were supposed to communicate, I don't know, like surety. Anyway, I mean, luckily I had no problems, but and then there was another time. There was another time I went to a sweat lodge, which, you know, has its own problems from a cultural appropriation aspect. And you go in the sweat lodge and they're doing their ritual thing that they do, and then they put out the fire, and suddenly it's the darkest you've ever experienced in your life. Your eyes literally have nothing to latch onto. And I immediately started weeping. I was sobbing. And I'm sitting here like, oh my God, what is wrong with me? I had no idea. Um, all all of the trauma that we're carrying, all of the pain, all of the horror, and these moments where you're like, oh, you just need to sit with yourself. It all came up. I did not think that I had anything to process, and I was incorrect. You know, I just wanted to live my life and not think about it. So anyway, um like I said, the more intense the experience and the fact that you don't necessarily even get to choose it, or someone is expecting you to take what they say without any kind of pushback or discernment, you know, again, you get to choose. You get to choose for you. Um, anyway, so I just want to put that caution out there. I don't feel like it is well enough communicated to victims of abuse or to the wider community. So when you're engaging with the body practices, when you're engaging with the mindfulness practices, when you're doing the metacognition thing, just be careful about obsession, be careful about rumination, be careful about not processing the experience, because we don't want to destabilize like our identity, our experience, our connection with reality. Anyway, I hope this makes sense, and I'll talk to you next time.